episode of that Hella Dank podcast. So, I'll try to cater this for people that know me and people that don't. Might be a little bit hard, so roll with me here. But I've been working on this podcast for the past 4 years. It's been, on and off, me dumping money into it, putting it together. But now I'm finally at a point where I'm ready to put the first episode out. It's probably not going to be that great, it's just, I want to go over the goals, what made me want to start this, why I'm doing this, I guess, I don't know. So I first got the idea of this, maybe I'll go over my goals first. So the goals of this show, it's not going to be one central theme, but one thing I'm going to, it's going to mostly be around interviewing people I've met in my life, which can range from anyone to, pipe welders to people who work in the industrial cannabis industry and hemp industry, among other things. But, it's really open to people I just find interesting in my day-to-day life. I just know a few people in both those industries I think are good starts. But I always like telling stories. I always liked the idea of hearing someone else's perspective and just kind of, what makes people tick. And for people that know, I've always been like a very social person whenever it comes to parties. I'm always there trying to meet new people and work. I try to meet all my fellow employees. And, I love school. When I was doing school, I became friends with everyone. I was interested in what everyone had to say. It's just, I'm a people person. I love people. And I feel like with that, kind of rolls into what my idea for this podcast is I could kind of facilitate that and use that to my advantage to maybe help, tell someone's story and maybe, just articulate a different perspective from the average Joe, because I know a ton of people that have some pretty interesting thoughts on life and how to just, how they make their way through the world. And so that kind of brought me to how I decided to get the motivation to build this in the first place was about COVID. When COVID first hit, I never even listened to a podcast. I never really considered a podcast. I kind of thought they were, for fucking people that, did acid and crazy stuff and listened to crazy shit. But as COVID hit, the work I was doing, I worked in commercial cannabis trimming for a while, and so it's very loud, and so I was kind of forced to wear earbuds, so I didn't blow my eardrums apart, because these machines, if anyone knows, these Twister T4 machines are extremely loud. Eventually, I'll get, before I get ahead of myself, that's where I started with listening to podcasts. I listened to all the music I liked, and then kind of, got bored of that because if anyone knows me, I listen to the same shit over and over again. But I got really intrigued with a couple people from their podcasts, usually starting with comedy podcasts, and I've kind of branched out. And, I'm just like listening to when I would listen to these stories and stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was like an aha moment of like, why I can do this, I took broadcast media in school, or high school, which, probably doesn't really mean much, but I did learn a few things when it comes to like cameras and editing and, kind of how to set up audio equipment. But so I had some background to it, but I just love technology and I love things. And so I feel like that was like, okay, I like this idea of this podcast. I also like, working with computers and cameras and stuff. And so I'm like, why don't I set this up as a challenge for myself? I want to build my own studio, invest all my money. I got a setup for 4 people, me and 3 guests. I got a soundboard. I knew nothing about how a soundboard worked. I did as much research as I could to learn how to adjust the settings. I'm sure, I don't know if this audio is going to be botched or what, but this is going to be it's going to be a learning process. It was then when I first set up this board, picking a program to shoot off of. I knew none of this, but I like a good challenge, and it's something. I like working on things. A lot of my friends know I work on cars or stuff in the garage. That's one thing that I do a lot. But ever since I was a kid, I've known how to build like a computer. I knew the basics of it at least. I've always played games and been a part of the computer, thing, whatever you want to call it, for most of my life. And so I figured I put two and two together with a couple other things, that would really, set up for what my vision was on this, if that makes sense. But sorry, I'm saying but a lot. This is a rough start. I'll figure this out. But yeah, so this podcast, my goal for it is, there's going to be eventually two. Right now I'm just going to do my one solo one, and then I'll eventually do my solo podcast and have some guests on. I'm going to alternate. I'll probably do bi-weekly is what I'm thinking. That will probably change. Once I get more money, invested, I'm going to eventually get some money for better cameras. Right now I'm just using these decent, the webcams are decent, but they're not exactly what I'm shooting for. I want to eventually get like 4K cameras I'm going to get a camera switcher so I can, switch camera angles on the fly when I have guests on. I'm going to really try to make this as legit of a video podcast as I could. So the second podcast that I'm going to eventually go and start once I kind of get things rolling here with my friend Taylor, that's going to be a podcast where it'll kind of be the same thing. We'll be interviewing people, but there'll be an extra theme involved, a background theme. We're going to have like a beer of the month, and so eventually I'm going to build like a tap coming out the center of this table here, and I want to get like a kegerator. It's kind of a lot, but it won't be that bad. So basically I'm going to get a kegerator set up to dispense beer out the center of this table here, and we want to do like once a month we get like a half keg and we do beer of the month, and go to some local, because everyone from Oregon knows there's 1,000 breweries here, so we're not going to run out of beers of the month, that's for sure. But basically how I want it to eventually get with that podcast is I want to basically let's pretend we do a beer of the month. And if that brewer or the owner of that company was interested in the show, potentially, we would like to invite them on. And that first episode of each month would be us talking about this beer, maybe have the head brewer on set or the owner, and then just kind of go through and talk about what made, like, how they make the beer or whatever the hell, just kind of interview each of these guys. And I've met a few brewers, and they're all kind of their own animal in a good way. They all have kind of an interesting story. So that's going to be the background theme of that podcast where, beer of the month. And then after we do that first episode with the brewer, if that ever works out, we're going to do every other week. Will be like, it could be either just Taylor and I talking to one another. This Taylor's going to do my co-host for the other show. He's a good friend of mine, known him for a while. So either him and I will be talking, bullshitting some stories or talking about maybe some current events. There is one mode that we were wanting to try is I want to install an overhead camera, and I kind of want to do, if it ever is just podcasts where it's just him and I, that we do like the podcast, but while we're doing it, we're playing a game of chess. I don't know how that's going to work out, but it's kind of a fun idea. And so, where am I going to go with that? Yeah, so guest on there, it'll be, either some of our close friends, there might be repeats or regulars, there might be some new people, and as the show picks up, maybe we'll try to get higher profile people on, if that ever happens. I'm not saying it will, but if it does, I have pretty high hopes and ambitions for this show. I feel like where I was in the beginning, where I just had like an old computer and a crappy monitor and like, a single microphone, where I was in the beginning was really small, and I really didn't see all the rest of what I got built here happening, but it just kind of did over time. And so now, if any of my close friends know, and I'll just admit this, I've been working on this since 2019. And the past 2 years, really everything has been together. I've just honestly been lazy and slacking, and I just, I went through a slump, I guess you could say. But I'm motivated now more than ever to get this going. I just went on vacation back to New York the other day and stayed there for 10 days. And, it's been 10 years. I'm originally from upstate New York. I moved to Oregon in Christmas of 2014. And ever since I moved out here, I haven't gone back. And I have, some family in New York, some friends. Oh, God damn it. And so the only time I ever went back since I moved was when my mom passed away about 5 years ago. And I went there for her wake, and I was only there for 2 days, and that was a different thing. I wasn't able to reconnect with my peeps and who I grew up with and stuff. And so I went back there recently and reconnected with these guys, and seeing it kind of helped me mentally to put closure on things and also retrace my steps, if that makes sense. And so when I came back from that trip, I just have this new sense of motivation that I haven't felt before, and it feels good. And, I heard that on this one other show I like to watch, is sometimes when you move out somewhere and you're in a funk or a fog, maybe you need to go back to where you came up with these ideas, like just retrace your steps and kind of see where you were a long time ago and what you were thinking then, and then that'll kind of help what your next move is now. And I kind of thought that was bullshit, but it did. I don't really know what I got out of the trip, but I will say this: it's kind of given me a new perspective on my life and what I have done and what other people have done, and it's freaked me out. Also, it's helped me out. And it's only been a couple of days since I've been back, but I'm I'm ready to take over the world, and so. When I got back and looked in this podcast room and looked at all the stuff I had built, I'm just I need to get my act together. I need to stop messing around. I need to stop goofing off. I need to, I want to get in shape, as I've been working on, and, trying to expand my horizons. I feel like this show is going to really help with that. And I hope it's going to help someone out there that's going to watch this. Maybe it'll be, I'm sure not all episodes are going to be good, but I'm going to try my best. Quality, it's going to be a work in progress, and I hope if people are going to watch and follow, I really hope you guys can, get something out of this and just help me. And if any of you guys want, my friends or anything, want to start something, I'd like to do my best to help you and tell you what I did. And, and I'm not going to lie, I'm just some dude, welding guy, works in the cannabis industry who just decided to throw some pieces of technology together, and now bam, I have a recording studio. And with that, I also like to shoot videos outside of here. And basically I hate saying it, I don't want to be a content creator, but that's basically what I'm describing, what I want to do with this show. So my buddies go out and do cool stuff, like riding on the sand dunes. I go and do cool stuff on my own, whether it's playing frisbee golf, kind of doing a vlogging thing, I think is what's going to end up happening. Is I'm going to do this podcast, but also have a separate channel where I'm going to have some help editing it, because I'm not going to be able to do it all. But just making cool little snippets of just some fun things me and my friends do, and maybe some of it will be entertaining, some of it will probably be boring. But like I said, I have a lot of goals for this, and I think who I am as a person is, this is going to be my fix, my, keep my mind out of the gutter kind of thing. It gives me something to look forward to and focus on, and kind of give me a little bit of a sense, a sense of therapy almost, because everyone needs that anymore. Yeah, forgive me if I'm trailing off all over here, but it's been a long work in the process here. It's been a lot of work to get to this point, and so I don't want to overwhelm myself too much. So it might be a little bit of a slow start, but just know that in the future, I'm hoping that it's gonna just, get bigger and bigger and, be what I want it to be. Eventually, I want to do music, like record. I don't want to like make beats or anything. I mean, I think that'd be cool, but I'd like to, do some music recording. I play the guitar myself. I'm not that good, but I'd like to eventually evolve this studio and get it up to the point where I could maybe start like, putting it out there where people want to like have, their music recorded. I could do that, or I could help produce beats, or I could, something along those lines. That's not exactly close in my vision right now for for what this is, but that's, like I said, all things are on the table entertainment wise. Like I really like this. I like this show business kind of feel I get from this, even though it's just a podcast on YouTube that no one's probably going to watch, but it gives me that sense of like, I'm out there and I want to, just have my stuff be told, shared on the internet for whoever wants to check it out. I want to, I'm going to do some shout outs here if anyone watches it, but like my sister, she has really put a lot of confidence in me to put this together. It's been a lot of help. She's always been, hitting me up, just being like, just do it already. Stop freaking out. And I'm like, all right, I'll do that. And here we are 2 years later. I'm doing my first episode. And then, my dad, he wasn't really sure what I was talking about at first when I told him I was putting this together, but I think he like gets the gist now and he's like all for it, which is cool. He's offered to help me out, but I told him, I was like, thanks, but this is something I'm going to do all myself. Like, I just want to be able to finish this and be able to say I did it. But, I appreciate all the help that he's given me, at least, and other things. But yeah, just my whole family and all my friends and Taylor too, he's been hitting me up like, we got to do this, you got to stop messing around. People that just sort of my day-to-day life that believed in me, that believed I could do this, really helped a lot. So I thank all you guys. I'm not going to go through and list all these people just because I don't know who's going to watch this. So these people probably won't even know, anyway. And so I believe the next show I'm going to have, this is probably going to be a shorter episode just because I can only say so much about my goals and ambitions, but my next show will probably have my friend Kelly will probably be on, Kelly Caudell. He's been a long, good friend of mine. He's worked in the hydroponic cannabis industry as well. He's actually one of my, I consider him a mentor. And he was probably like when I first moved to Oregon, was one of the first guys who kind of showed me the way in the cannabis industry, because one thing about me is when I graduated high school, when I was in high school, I did welding. I loved welding. I went to college for 4 years for welding and fabrication and non-destructive testing. And, that's like my primary career. But on the side of that, when I was doing all that, is I was, ironically working in the cannabis industry because I always had a niche for that. I loved growing. I loved everything about it. It's just a brand new industry. It's, it's kind of like a, stick it to the man kind of feel, in a good way, if everything's being done legally, of course. But it's like, it's just so cool. I've worked in every facet of this industry, you name it, from hand trimming flower to running a short path distillation unit, rotary evaporators, growing, you name it, I've been there. And I got to say, like, this guy, Kelly, that's going to be on, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have met the connections that I have now. And he, really changed my life in a good way. He gave me a lot of opportunities. He's been my boss for several different jobs, and he's a one-of-a-kind dude. And, I'm happy to call him my friend. Him and I talk every day. But he has a very interesting story to tell, too, like his upcoming in the cannabis industry, his personal, short, whatever you call it stuff. He's a very deep dude, And so I think he's going to be the perfect guest for our first episode with the guest at least. Aside from that, it's just going to be kind of, random, but I feel like I would announce him as the first one because he deserves it. There's several, we've shot podcasts kind of before in this room, but either people are screaming, they're not, there's no etiquette, everyone's talking over each other, so it's just not footage I can share without it, it's just annoying. But I'm sure in the future I'm going to go, there's one with him is what I'm talking about, and it was really funny. I don't, one day if we ever do a bloopers or a background thing, I'll share it, but I don't think he's going to want it on right now for the first thing. But, yeah, so aside from that, this damn computer, I have to fix that. Yeah, I don't really know what else to go off on here. I guess this will be for people that don't know. Or don't know me. I'm not a celebrity of any kind. I'm just some random dude. I'm 27 years old, but I feel like I've lived quite a full life for my age, and so I just want to express that to other people who don't know me, and just kind of maybe understand like my story and what I'm trying to deliver here. If you don't like it, you don't have to watch it, but if I get one view, one listener or something, that makes all the difference to me. And so I want to just share that experience with whoever is out there that I'm not going to try to get all inspirational in my first episode, but I'm proud of myself for putting this together, and, I just worked some basic 9-to-5 job, essentially, and it freaks me out that I was able to save my money and get to this point, and so my whole message about that is, anyone out there can do, they can do this, or whatever it needs to be. It just takes some dedication, even if you mess around for a few years, but I've stuck it to it, and it took every ounce of energy for me today to finally just be like, you need to shoot this episode and stop messing around. And when I got home, I ate a snack, and I'm just like, you're not going to do it, and I finally just ran in here, set it up, and it's going. So you just got to do it and take what's yours, because it's going to, it'll eat you up if you don't, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm probably not making sense at all, but it's my first episode, so let's go. But, so, yeah, the name of this podcast, I chose That Hella Dank, it's That Hella Dank podcast, and I'm sure I've already heard this where people hear that, and they're like, oh, it's like weed themed or whatnot. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, yeah, there will be cannabis businessmen, like legit businessmen on here, but it's not going to be a 420, everyone's smoking and all that. This is going to be very professional, and it's just a funny name that I liked, and it hasn't been taken yet, so it's mine. And, a few of my friends were like, oh, you should just call it Jack's Podcast, and I'm like, no one knows who Jack is. I don't even know if I said my name at the beginning of this episode, but yeah, my name is Jack. And so the name of the other podcast I'm not going to say yet, because it's not set up, and I feel like if I put it up and put this episode, someone's going to steal it immediately, because it is a good name. But, we'll worry about that when we get there. I have no idea when that podcast is going to be running, but I'm hoping that with this episode coming out, it's kind of going to help light a fire under my ass and my co-host's ass to get this shit rolling, so that way, it's on. This winter, like, this summer was kind of rough for me. I didn't really do a whole lot, but I just worked a ton because I had to pay for this trip I had just mentioned earlier. Just sucked every last dime out of me. But this winter, it's on and popping. So I'm hoping you guys will enjoy this episode and, take something from it. But yeah, the next episode will be not next week, but the week after. We're going to do bi-weekly episodes. They'll probably be anywhere from hour to 2 hours long. I have no idea. But I look forward to you guys checking me out, and thanks for listening, and have a good day. Thank you for listening to that Hella Dank podcast.